Alright, so remember the story from about a year ago? Story of this case of 1979 O-Pee-Chee hockey cards? The famous story of this case being found tucked away in a basement in Saskatchewan, Canada? With everyone speculating on how many Gretzky rookie cards might be inside? Yeah, just a completely incredible discovery of modern day buried treasure. Well, there's a new update. We've got a new wrinkle to this pretty wild story. So if you're new to the channel or new to this sensational story, here's a bit of context. And if you know all the details, feel free to skip ahead. I'll leave a timestamp. But like I said, if you're new to the channel, or if you don't know how Canadian rapper Drake is wrapped up in this story, you better keep watching. So back in February 2024, the sports card world absolutely exploded when the news broke about the discovery of this super rare multi-million-dollar treasure. And the story went pretty viral, especially for those of us living in Canada. News media outlets like CTV and CBC were covering everything from the discovery and all the way to the final sale.
What does it look like to you? Does it look like it's a $5 million box? But it is. Box of hockey cards. A family in Saskatchewan. We've been talking about this all morning. We were talking about it when it originally broke. A family in Saskatchewan that had this box in their attic ended up putting it up on the auction block, and it sold, as we've been telling you this morning, for about $5 million, a huge sum.
So during these crazy months, we heard a lot from this Heritage Auctions rep, which is the auction house that brokered the deal. He was on TV a bunch talking about how rare of a find this was and why this case was valued in the millions.
We as a show are really caught up in this story, and I dare say people in Canada are caught up in it too. Are you as well? Is it as cool to you as it seems to us?
It's incredible. You don't see finds like this. No one knew that this was out there. No one knew that this even still existed. A 1979 O-Pee-Chee hockey case that's been untouched for all these years. It's incredible.
Oh, and if you're wondering about this news footage and why it looks like someone has opened the case and is handling the boxes with their bare hands, well, it's because that actually did happen. So even though these news broadcasts are referring to this as an unopened case of 1979 O-Pee-Chee, well, technically the case seal was broken, and it was broken by this top-rated authentication company, BBCE. There's an entire video with BBCE and Heritage Auctions showing the entire process, which is pretty cool to watch. So BBCE are the ones who authenticated the find and label this as a legit sealed case. However, even though they've been authenticating sports card boxes and cases for many decades, they've definitely made a few mistakes. And then in the video, there's this somewhat nonchalant way in which they transported this $5 million item in this dumpy looking cardboard box. I think my FedEx delivery guy might keep my PSA orders more protected than this. Anyways, I've covered a lot of this in an earlier video, so check that out if you're curious. Plus, there's also a pretty sensational story that makes you question a lot more about the authentication process. So check that out. But let's get back to the main story and back to all the hype we saw on Canadian TV news. And it was quite funny at times watching some of the journalists try to make sense of how and why this case would sell for millions of dollars. And it was pretty clear that most of them weren't sports card collectors.
So these hockey cards in these boxes, how do we know that there might be these Wayne Gretzky cards in them? Have they ever been opened before?
So they haven't been opened. What we're talking about is a case of 16 boxes of 1979 O-Pee-Chee hockey. So inside these boxes, there should be a total of around 10,000 cards. And if you do the math, it should come out to somewhere between 25 and 30 Wayne Gretzky rookies.
And is that what makes these cards so valuable?
Yep. So condition is very important. So for this Wayne Gretzky card, a PSA 10, which is the best of the best condition, sold for $3.75 million by itself once. Now, there's no guarantees that you get a Gretzky that is in perfect condition, but what we have here is a unicorn. We've never seen a case of O-Pee-Chee hockey like this before.
And so with the possibility of buying as many as 30 untouched Gretzky rookies, the estimated price for this box was in the millions. And it sounded like the final hours of the auction were pretty intense.
Okay, so you put it up for auction. How much did you think it was going to go for?
You know, so we had a pre-auction estimate of $2 million, that's USD. And I was hoping it'd be closer to 3. And in America, he sold here on Sunday morning. Early bidding, it ended at 3.72 million USD.
blowing through your expectations. How was the bidding to get to that final price? Was it fast and furious, lots of bidders? How did it go?
So the end was pretty ferocious. It was between two gentlemen who brought it up several $100,000 at the very end. Our bidding opened at 11 p.m. and it went on through into 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. Sorry.
1 a.m. and it was, as I understand it, an American versus a Canadian at the end.
Yes.
Classic
Yes, it was.
hockey battle.
Yes, very much so. And the Canadian ended up victorious here. So this case, I can say, is going back home to Canada.
So a final sale of 3.72 million US dollars, or more than 5 million Canadian. Pretty crazy stuff. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, the story starts to veer off in a little bit of a different direction. A few weeks later, we get to meet the winner of the auction. This guy, a realtor from Ontario, and he gives a pretty bizarre interview with a reporter from the CBC. He claims to have stayed up all night drinking Red Bull the night of the auction, but then just a few days later, it seems like he gets cold feet and has second thoughts about owning the case.
I think it's really, cool to have these cards. But again, I'm not so passionate about it as I've seen other people in the sports collecting world, how they're so into it, and it's like their lives kind of revolve around it, and they're so passionate about it.
And so this is definitely turning into a pretty weird story, and you're probably wondering what would make this guy spend $5 million on something he's not passionate about.
And so for yourself, again, explain how it is that someone who's works as a real estate agent and has never gotten into the high stakes world of sports collectibles decided to spend $5 million on a 79 O-Pee-Chee box.
The winning bid for this 1979 mega box hockey cards really originated from when I was 7 years old, where I met a girl in my class. Her name was Elise, and I really think that I had a connection to her, and that she was my true soulmate. And she was interested in hockey, so I actually joined a hockey team. Basically, I actually have one of Wayne Gretzky's 1979 rookie cards myself.
Right.
And that's what piqued my interest when I heard about the auction coming up, and I was following it.
Okay, so we're starting to see that our realtor friend here is a little bit of an odd duck. And so, of course, he had some other interesting ideas for the case.
I started a journey, I guess, to find, I think, what would be a better home for these cards. I reached out to Wayne Gretzky. I also tried to reach out to Daryl Katz, who's the owner of the Edmonton Oilers, as well as Philip Anschutz, Daniel Negreanu, a Toronto-born world's best poker player, and Mitch Goldhar, the owner of Smart Centers, and even Drake, because I understand he's a huge sports fan.
This is definitely turning into a pretty wild story. And if you're thinking he didn't have the money in the first place, you'd be wrong. At least according to him, he's got more than enough money to pay, and supposedly has much more than $5 million.
Now, with regards to resources, I had an uncle who was fairly wealthy, and when he passed away, I was fortunate to receive a substantial inheritance from him. He actually bought 100 acres. Sorry, he bought 100 acres of land in an area of Toronto at the time that was basically rural, which is he bought it in the 1960s, and he sold it early 2000 for $2 million an acre. So he had over $200 million in his estate when he passed away.
Yeah, and so now that you've bought it, it remains in the possession of Heritage Auctions while you arrange final payment. Is that right? You've paid about $3 million of the 3.7 US?
Yeah, that's right. I actually felt that the safest place for these cards are in their vault in Texas. And then when I finalize what the final destination for these cards will be, I will, I'll make arrangements for them to be transferred.
Well, actually, not all of what he said is true. The O-Pee-Chee case did remain in the hands or in the vault of Heritage Auctions. However, according to this report from the New York Times via The Athletic, Heritage Auctions says that no payment or deposit of any kind was ever made to Heritage by the winning bidder. And so here's maybe the most memorable part of this interview. If he's not able to get a hold of Drake or Gretzky or Daniel Negreanu, this is his master plan.
In the event that I don't get in touch with anybody, or no one gets in touch with me, I'd like to gift them to Elise, the young girl for way back from school, and that she could have them as a total gift. Because I throughout the years, I actually believe that she was like my true soulmate. I still do, but this is just to be a gift to her.
So in the end, it turns out that our realtor friend didn't end up paying for the case. But now let's get to the update on the story. Is Drake the new owner of the case? Is it the great one? Was he able to get hold of Janet and Wayne?
Again, I believe that these cards would be in a better home, with, like someone like Wayne Gretzky or Daryl Katz or Daniel Negreanu, or even Mitch Goldhar or Drake, that are like sports enthusiasts and very, very serious about their support of the sports as well. And unfortunately, I wasn't actually able to make contact with any of these individuals.
And I guess it's probably not a huge surprise that he wasn't able to set up a call with Drake to offer him the case. And with this final clip, maybe we can understand why he wasn't able to make contact.
Oh yeah, if anybody wants to reach out and interested in the cards, I put the name and email of the person that's helping me with this. That could, I don't know if you can read it. Can you actually see it?
So really just a truly bizarre twist to this story. And so did he end up gifting this case to his soulmate? Well, it doesn't seem like the story ends with a love connection because there was no gifting of the case. And so according to Heritage Auctions, after all avenues were exhausted to complete the sale, the Saskatchewan family that consigned the cards decided against pursuing legal action and agreed to put it back up for auction. So this case went back up in auction again in November. Now the big question is, how much would the case sell for as a resale? With all the big interest and buzz, would it sell for more? Would it fetch a higher price than $3.72 million? Or was that $3.72 million somewhat inflated based on our realtor guy bidding up the price in the final hours of the auction? Well, when I started following this on November 13th, we can see there are still 22 days left in the auction, and the bidding is sitting a little over $800K USD, or a total of $975,000, which is the final price the winner of the auction pays. And this covers the 20% buyer's premium that Heritage takes for brokering the sale. And as I mentioned, there are still 22 days left in the auction. So I was checking pretty often, but there wasn't a ton of action. So on November 30th, the bid is up a bit. It's been bumped up to $1.35 million. Then a couple days later on December 2nd, as we get closer to the final auction end date of December 5th, there's no change. Still at $1.35 million, and you can see there are only 3 days left to go. I checked again on December 3rd, no change. Bid is still at $1.35 million. Then again on December 4th, still no change. And just 1 day to go. We're still stuck on $1.35 million, or $1.62 million USD with the buyer's premium. Then the next day on December 5th, which is the last day of the auction, we start to see some action. And the bid jumps 50 grand, jumps up to 1.4 million, or a total of 1.68 million USD with the buyer's premium. Still though, at 1.68 million, that's more than 2 million US dollars less than the previous auction sale of 3.72 million. And this is the final day. So in the final hours of the auction, would there be a $2 million final frenzy? And just thinking about our Saskatchewan family in this moment, they had to be watching pretty closely with the Heritage Auctions rep. Probably a bit of an awkward phone call this time. And I think it'd be hard not to be disappointed seeing these lower bids. But if you've ever watched or participated in some of these auctions, oftentimes there's extra time allotted for extended bidding. And this is where prices can go sky high. These final hours can get pretty crazy. And I know personally you can go from being the winning bidder thinking you've gotten the steal of a deal to in just a few minutes being massively outbid. So things can get pretty hectic during extended bidding. And so would we see a frenzy of bids and a gigantic jump in price? And we get some more bids. We do see the price spike. During the extended bidding, the price jumped from 1.4 million to 2.1 million. That's a pretty healthy jump of 700,000 US dollars. And would it get another bump? At this point, our Saskatchewan family would still need more than $1 million to achieve the same price. Would we see another bump? Well, in the end, there were no more bids. And the final sale price for the case finished at 2.52 million US dollars, or more than 3.6 million Canadian. Still a pretty incredible amount, though quite a bit lower than the original sale price of 3.72 million. And for the Saskatchewan family, that's a drop in price of 1.2 million US dollars. And here's something I noticed during the auction. I can't remember if this warning notice was always there, but you can see it says that Heritage requires bidders to be approved. So it would appear that everyone bidding in the auction is a legit and verified buyer. So hopefully our Saskatchewan family will be getting paid in the next couple of weeks. Well, that's the show, everyone. If you liked it, leave a comment. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment. I do read all the comments. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.